Imagine that in another timeline, your country is experiencing an unprecedented level of crime. The government can't keep up, and there's no room to put criminals even if they do arrest them. Instead of trying a normal solution, your government funds the production of a radical new show to placate the angry masses. Why deal with crime when you can pit criminals against each other in a thrilling new blood sport? The first step is to outfit irredeemable psychopaths with experimental technology, mostly weapons, but also including taser collars that can incapacitate them in case they decide to try anything. You may wonder, why give criminals experimental weapons? And I say, why not? It's free live testing, and if they lose a limb or two in the process, who cares? These irredeemable ones are the trackers, and their job is to help test other criminals to see who's worth being released back into the greater society. Or at least that's the polite reason. The actual reason is to permanently deal with repeat offenders and scare people out of crime altogether. Not only that, but it gives the angry population a way to vent their frustrations and directs their attention away from government officials. Very sneaky. The second group of potentially redeemable criminals are given special vests that transmit their location to trackers every few minutes, so they can't hide in one place forever. Now these are called runners. If they can evade the trackers for a certain amount of time, then they've earned their freedom. If the trackers catch them, well, let's just say it ends very poorly for the runners. Like brutal murder type of poorly. Now, the government doesn't want to spend any more money than it has to, so where should they host this twisted game of hide and seek? How about the most crime-riddled, underappreciated, and hated town in the entire nation? Surely nobody would really care that much if there was any collateral damage. It's perfect. Release the runners into the city and give them some time to scatter, then let the trackers loose and see how long the runners can evade their untimely demise. Judgment. Or justice. Whichever the public likes better. Simple enough, right? Strap a camera on each tracker for some stunning POV shots indoors, and have drone cameras capture the outdoor action. Hire an energetic narrator to shoutcast the entire thing like a sporting event, and you've got yourself a killer show, pun 100% intended. So, what are the drawbacks? First is the public response. People are going to be very apprehensive without a proper explanation or justification. So it should be marketed as an expedited version of the justice system. Runners are proving their ability to adapt into model citizens by staying on their toes and evading capture. If they survive, it's proof of their capacity to change. The government should acknowledge the widespread issues with crime and criminal organizations, so the focus is squarely on the idea that this is a solution for those things. Second is lawsuits from collateral damage. The easiest solution is to funnel those lawsuits to the trackers themselves. Make them the focus so that people blame them rather than the people who made the show possible. If the trackers are at fault, they can be sued as much as they like because they're not leaving the show alive anyway. Hard to be sued for money when you don't own anything and are a lifelong prisoner. Lastly is keeping the appeal up. If it's too graphic right away, people will be disgusted. If it's too stale, then nobody will be interested. The key here is slow escalation through the trackers. Start simple and get more absurd as time goes on. Each season becomes a thrilling experience of what the audience will get to see happen to criminals next. With all of the basics out of the way, your government in this imaginary timeline can now implement the very first season of this show, which I'll just call Blood Runners because I'm very original and super good at naming things. Clearly. The first season of Blood Runners goes as intended, however it barely scrapes through and has to be funded solely by the government itself. Critics call it the most unethical thing to date, but a certain portion of the population appreciate the direct approach to solving the crime issue. The biggest problem is that people say it doesn't really have any substance and feels out of place. So what next? Some big brain thinkers decide that in order to make this an acceptable show, they need characters for people to latch onto. Producers tell the military to make weirder weapons, fun crackpot ideas, and try everything, no matter how ridiculous it might seem. They hire costume designers and pick out the most eccentric prisoners they have to be trackers. Give them nicknames they can be called by the narrator and treat them like the stars of the show. They are the bringers of justice, and they should receive a suitable amount of recognition for their work. Season 2 explodes in popularity. Now the trackers are the mascots, and people latch onto their favorites as if it were a real sport. The creative weaponry, outlandish designs, and psychotically lovable personalities hook a large chunk of the population who are bitter about the state of affairs. And soon, people start to see it as a viable solution that can also entertain them. Critics are drowned out by the sensationalism and buzz created by such a bold solution to crime, and soon the show becomes unstoppable. Seasons go by, years of blood and violence keep the population content, but it also creates a number of issues. A coalition of dissenting voices has grouped together and formed a vigilante organization determined to end the show and overthrow the government. Next is that the variety of games has to keep increasing over time, because nobody wants to watch the same hide-and-seek games over and over for years at a time. Both problems are solved at the same time through the use of real-world justice games. People are put on wanted lists, and trackers are rewarded with privileges for finding and delivering justice to them. Introduce more game types that test trackers against each other as well, like who is the fastest, who scores the most points during their hunt, and which trackers are talented enough to overcome unexpected obstacles such as ambushes and traps. Even still, these issues are largely overshadowed by the cultural impact of the show. Trackers are now icons with their own fandoms and official merchandise. The more stable ones are allowed to show their faces in public and do interviews outside of the prison they are normally kept in. A couple of nasty incidents have led to them requiring a taser collar at all times, but otherwise they are able to refrain from violence while doing public appearances. Prison populations have dropped significantly, of course, and the crime rate is technically decreasing in terms of raw numbers. Military innovation has peaked due to all the strange concepts they've had to develop, and now the country is one of the leading forces in experimental weaponry. The town that hosts it is deteriorating and becoming a little more of a ghost town, but that is a calculated cost. On all fronts, the show appears to be a success. Time flies by, and the show continues onward for decades. Trackers die, fans mourn, and new trackers end up replacing them. Prisoners are imported from other parts of the nation, and copycat shows have sprouted up in other countries. In this imaginary timeline, your country has become the dominant one through the global popularity of this show, Blood Runners. The military is at least 20 years ahead of everybody else, and the government has an iron grip over the entire continent, possibly even the world. There appears to be no end to this entertainment empire, but things are not well in the real world. The vigilante organization is backed by powerful enemies of the country and has become a full paramilitary army of people who despise the show and see it as a blight on the world. Trackers become targets, and they can no longer leave the secure prisons for fear of being assassinated. This means less parasocial interaction between them and fans, but this also helps cement them as legendary figures in history. They become more than people. The world largely ignores their atrocities. Crime numbers have dropped on paper, but crimes become more violent in nature. Violence has been embedded as a viable solution to problems, and this creates even more problems. Society is in the process of fracturing, and nothing seems to be able to stop it. The upper class build highly secured metropolises for themselves, and anybody with enough money escapes the deteriorating world as quickly as possible to hide in these gigantic cities. The first one is created by your country, and is aptly called Silver City by the rest of the citizens for its otherworldly shine against the backdrop of destruction. As technology advances, the trackers become harder to take out, and they stop being just entertainment figures. They are living weapons sent out to attack military targets on the side to help the government keep its hold over the country. As the split between supporters of the show and the paramilitary vigilantes grows, the world outside of the rich safe havens becomes little more than a war zone. The explosions are a daily occurrence, corpses can be found lying around on the streets, and the gap between societal classes is larger and more obvious than ever. They are separated by a literal barrier, with one side being safe, clean, and ordered, and the other side descending into anarchy and violence. The government stops caring about the world outside the metropolis of Silver City, and soon government resources are pulled back into it. The justification? Criminals have overtaken the country, and all the good people of the nation are safe within the walls of the metropolis. More metropolises are built across the globe, and the amount of destruction has decimated life on Earth. The world turns into a wasteland, and the safe haven metropolises manage to insulate themselves further with technology. Blood Runners continues onward as a way to entertain the elite. Trackers go through so much experimentation that they become machines with human operators built into them. And with each technological breakthrough, they become even harder to stop. The entire world outside of Silver City is branded as barbaric, and so trackers are sent out to kill indiscriminately. As the Earth itself deteriorates and the atmosphere thins due to the lack of plant life, eventually nighttime is the only safe time to be outside. Silver City and other places like it are the only remnants of life that exist. Small groups wander the wasteland after dark and hide during the day, hoping to avoid the watchful gaze of the Silver Towers and the eventual appearance of the trackers. Towns outside the walls are built underground. People trade technology scavenged from dead trackers, and those who break rules from within the safe havens are thrown out into the wasteland to die. The world lives on like this, fragmented, hollow, and mostly dead. By this point in time, the show doesn't really need to exist because the trackers are eternal. It could continue on for hundreds of years, maybe even thousands. The trackers become melting pots of technology that wear the faces of the person they were, and eventually the world just forgets what used to be. Nothing changes, not because people don't feel the discomfort of the situation, but because humanity dug itself a hole too deep to ever crawl out of. And now the only way forward is down.